So this next section is about systems, which, as you would think, reservation systems are a piece of this, so some of these overlap. But to kick off our section of adding in systems, we have Aiden Forsi from the Columbia River Gorge Commission, and he's going to talk about some of the changes to the Gorge Commission plan that address some of these issues with recreation. Aiden, are you here?
Yeah, I am.
Thank you.
So, oops, I lost my notes. There they are. So hi everyone, my name is Aiden Forsi. I'm a land use planner with the Columbia River Gorge Commission. Be talking today about the scenic area and how our management plan addresses recreation. So I have asked Emily for about 5 minutes to go a little bit more into history, and she has very gracefully allowed that. So I'm going to go a little bit into the background before I talk about the management plan. So this area that we're talking about, we want to make sure that we're clear that is the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, established by an act of Congress in 1986. That act created the Columbia River Gorge Commission and directed the Commission and Forest Service to develop land use rules for the scenic area through a management plan. That act and management plan are guided by two purposes: to protect and enhance the scenic, natural, cultural, and recreation resources of the gorge, and to protect and support the economy of the gorge by encouraging growth in urban areas and allowing economic development outside of those urban areas consistent with resource protections. If your eyes have rolled back into your head, I understand. To put it a different way, we're charged with ensuring that the gorge stays beautiful, but not static. The management plan does a lot of things for us. Can you go to the next slide, Emily? And then one more. The management plan does a lot of things for us, but primarily it describes different categories of land, like special management areas, where those two purposes tip, the balance between those two purposes tips towards resource protections, the urban areas where the commission rules don't apply and the balance tips to development, and the general management areas where that tension between the two purposes keeps the balance even. The designations that we have determine what types of development can be built and the rules that apply to that development. Next slide, please. Another description of land in the gorge are the recreation intensity classes, and this is where the rubber hits the road for us. The recreation intensity classes, or the RICs, determine what kind of recreation developments are allowed in that area. And through that, the RICs in some way limit the amount of use in an area can receive. RIC 1s are also called very low intensity recreation areas. And that's supposed to be where it's kind of the lightest touch. That area was identified that there's some protected resources there, or some reason that we can't expect that there would be a lot of recreation use. There's RIC 4, which are largely established recreation sites in areas where the recreation use is much more pronounced. Because the management plan, kind of by design, is implemented by county planners, folks who are not experts in recreation management, the RICs are very prescriptive about what kind of recreation development is allowed. So when you go in and put in a permit for a trail, the planner just has to look at the list, see that it meets those standards, and can check the box and move on. At a RIC 1 site, you're basically allowed to build trails and viewpoints, and you're only allowed to build a 10-car parking lot. That's that limit of use in theory that was put in for the RICs. At a RIC 4 site, something like Multnomah Falls, you can build new up to a 250-car parking lot. Interpretive facilities a lot more, so there's just a lot more use in that site. Since the management plan was first implemented in the 90s, recreation use has changed dramatically. We're seeing significantly more use, the types of use have shifted, and those RICs and other recreation rules have not been updated since the first management plan. So we went into updating the management plan for the scenic area in 2016. We made sure that one of our focus was on those recreation rules. Can you go next slide, Evan? The biggest change we made, so when a planner now looks at your application to submit or for a new recreation development, they're going to see these standards, the recreation settings. Working with a technical team, including Stan and Eric White and others, working with recreation stakeholders in the gorge and with input from the public, we came up with these descriptions of the social, physical, and managerial characteristics of each of those recreation intensity classes. The purpose of this was to give recreation managers some guiding principles in drafting applications, and again, ensuring that those planners had some standards to apply. when reviewing them. So as a quick example, if you're building a new trail in a RIC1 social setting, you need to be aiming to provide opportunities for solitary experiences. And that's even if the recreation manager putting in that application knows the site will get a lot of use. The reason that we did something like this is that we know that this happens already and it's possible. The Multnomah Joaquina Falls loop starts at the base of Multnomah Falls, but it's effectively a one-way loop. So your social experiences you're going around, the number of encounters that you're going to receive, or the number of encounters you're going to have are going to remain low. Ryan with Washington Trails Association made the point earlier in the chat that this attention to design can highlight the values and qualities of the place while encouraging responsible behaviors and recreation use. And that was kind of the thought that we had when putting this together. Next slide. We also made some smaller but important changes. RIC4 sites always required mass transit facilities. We changed that to also include RIC3. So at our moderate and high intensity, you're required to have some facilities for transit. And we're encouraging this kind of development of RIC1 and 2 sites as well. We've added some general guidelines about equity and accessibility of recreation developments. We updated some policy statements based on recreation use and safety. And we made other clarifying edits for non-policy changes. One thing that we wanted to do with this plan revision, but we were unable to do, was revisiting that recreation intensity class map and seeing if any kind of redesignation would make sense. That map is also 30 years old. And we know with conversations from some stakeholders that the map doesn't quite match what's on the ground in some places. It may be possible for us to update that map in the future, figure out where we can do a better job identifying areas where there can be more recreation use, or where we might need to curtail future recreation use in order to protect resources. Next slide. Looking forward, and kind of the main point we want to make is that the act and the management plan and the recreation intensity classes all speak only to the type of development that can be built. We have all these other ideas in our head while we're trying to put these standards together, but ultimately where we have influence or where we have direct influence is what can get built on the ground. So as such, the Gorge Commission doesn't regulate recreation use or overuse directly. But we realize that we can require recreation managers to consider how to manage use. We can allow the development that makes it easier for recreation sites to manage use, and we can support policies and processes like congestion planning that lead towards better managed use. We're not the lead agencies. We're not telling those agencies what to do, but we can be there and be able to sit at the table. The management plan, the act, all of this national and scenic area stuff is complicated. But that complication comes from the fact that it's expected of us that we're going to work collaboratively. There's a balance there, right? We're trying to meet these two purposes of the act. We're all trying to do multiple things while addressing tourism and recreation use in the gorge. The management plan sets the stage for that work to happen and gets us all facing the same direction, focusing on that balance between protection of resources, the provision of the recreation experience, and support for local communities. And that's it. That was a lot of words, quicker than I anticipated.
That was great. I thank all of the speakers for putting up with our very limited time. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Aiden.